Okay.
Hey, this is Jeff Hansen in Silicon Valley, Northern California.
And Arvin Paredes in Los Angeles, California.
So, together we have a combined 40 years of full time real estate experience as licensed brokers in the state of California. And here's what we're going to bring to you today. You want to let us know, Arvin?
Yeah, the topic today is when you're in contract and you're representing the buyer and you get a home inspection done and the report comes back and there are a lot of items that are suggested to be fixed or things that are in disrepair, and your client says, "Hey, I want all of these fixed," or "What's how do I get the seller to pay for these things to get done?" How do you
Mm-hmm.
handle that whole situation?
Sorry, it's already stressing me out. I can just feel it. So, where do you want to start with this?
Let's start with, you get the home inspection back and you're going over it with your client, and your client says, "Okay, what do we do next?" Let's say there's like 10 line items
Right.
of that are in red. Usually they're in red, right? For each part of the home. So they say, "Okay, what do we do now?"
Well, I'll start with going back a little bit in time, which is to prepare for this moment, is to prepare your buyer when you write the offer and get in a contract. In fact, by chance, I had this conversation today with a buyer we're going to look at a property. It's a little bit out of the area from here, but it's someone that wants me to help them. And it's an area where they don't have reports up front, which I think how most of the country operates. So it's preparing the client that the purpose of the home inspection or other inspections is really just to point out huge deficiencies. So you want to go in assuming there's a bunch of little items here and there. Every home has just a number of homeowner maintenance items. So a big part of it, I think, is how you set up the expectation with the buyer. This isn't our chance to go. We're not going to go in and ask for every little tiny thing, but it's really, we'll assume there's lots of things that are wrong, but we want to make sure we're not surprised by the houses falling down the hillside, or it's contaminated by some substance, right? Or the roof is just falling in and deteriorating.
I remember you telling me back when I got into real estate many, many years ago. I remember you hearing you say to buyer, multiple buyers, the home inspector's job is to point out things that are wrong with the property. Their job is not to say everything that's great about a home. That's not what you're paying them for.
Right. Yeah, I had one home inspection I remember where it was an older home, but in decent condition. And he's there with the buyer and goes through the laundry list of all the things. And they're like, "Oh my God, this is overwhelming." And fortunately, he had the wherewithal. He said, "Oh no, this property's in great condition. Are you kidding me? Oh no, this is really good." But only that was only after going through everything that's totally wrong, right? So you kind of want to prepare people that in fact, they're encouraged to find more wrong because they have liability if they don't find things, all the inspectors. So point out, if anything, they're going to weigh on the side of more than less, right? They're not going to miss things. They're going to go and over the top and make it for their own liability, make it sound as bad as possible. So that's just backtracking for a moment on how to prepare people for this moment when you get the inspection. But and actually, you point out the home inspection could be any inspection, right? You get some inspection
Mm-hmm.
done, and there's well, let's say the home inspection, a number of little things. How do you like to handle that?
Yeah, I like to let them know, first of all, it's um, good to be at the inspection if you can. Maybe not the whole inspection, but the tail end of it, so that we can have, before the inspector puts together the report back at their office after the inspection is done, that we can all be together and talk about what are the major things that are wrong in the property, what needs to get taken care of soon, and what can wait till later. What are the big ticket items? What are the minor items?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then they come up with the word. Well, it depends on their reaction too, right? It depends on
Yeah.
some buyers like, "Oh, it's not bad. Okay, you know." I would just ask, kind of ask them there, did you read the report? What did you think? Or ideally it's good to be there. It's good for the buyer to be there too. That, it's great for them to hear directly and see what they're talking about. But if you have a buyer that says, which I think is your question, the laundry list of we want this fixed and the door sticks a little bit, it shouldn't be sticking, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had a buyer client. This is someone I had just met before we wrote the offer, so we didn't have a lot of trust, unfortunately. But they said, yeah, the fence is leaning. I think the seller should replace the whole fence, which in that market is not reasonable. Part of this is so dependent on the market you're in, and I mean, what's common where you're at and what kind of market it is. Very dependent on those things and who has control. Does the buyer have more control or the seller? But I would start with kind of asking the buyer, well, what are your thoughts? See what they're thinking and see if they're going to be reasonable or unreasonable, right? If they're reasonable, then you might say, well, maybe we ask for those things. I would also add, in my experience, I think you're better off asking for, even if it's for certain things, asking for money to get done later, rather than, because one thing that really stresses a seller out is not just the cost, but the hassle. Like, we only have 3 weeks to close escrow and we've got this whole laundry list of things to get done. It's very challenging to get done, and they don't care how well it's done. They just want it completed. I explain this to a buyer too. If you ask the seller to do it, they just want to get it done quickly and cheaply. They don't care if the color matches. They don't care about the quality. So how about if we ask for a credit or lower price to pay for these items, so that then you can get them done after the close of escrow.
Yeah, if you're having the seller take care of all these items, then I think it can create more problems throughout the transaction. It could delay so many things. You create a whole argument dispute between how things were done, who was used to make these repairs. Yeah, I mean, the sellers are trying to just get out of it. So
Yeah, and then talking about it with the listing agent, like with your buyer, you want to encourage them to be reasonable and prep them beforehand. But then when you actually make the request, let's say they decide we want these 8 things taken care of, it's going to be $1,000. I'm just making it up, right? A few little things, $1,000. When presenting that to the listing agent, I kind of blow it up, right? You minimize with your client, with the seller, with the listing agent, you kind of blow it up like, hey, we went in expecting that there were going to be things wrong, but we just had no idea. We had no idea that blah, 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 right? Whatever these items are. We had no idea there was a reverse polarity in one of the, we just didn't know that, so they were a little concerned about that. And that's why we're making this request.
nice. Yeah, I mean, I think more often than not, it's you. Well, from what I've experienced and what we've experienced is you end up getting hopefully some kind of dollar amount from the seller to go towards your closing costs that you can use for later on to you can use that money to fix it however you want. But we've cases where there are little things that have to do with a faucet or through the listing agent and them talking to their client about it. It's something that can get fixed pretty easily within a few days, right? Sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, another benefit here is it's very helpful if you know some tradespeople, which is helpful as a realtor anyway. Someone you can refer to your client, and also get a ballpark for what it might cost. Someone you can just call and say, hey, if you're going to fix this or fix that or take care of this small item, what would you guesstimate it might cost, right? What's our ballpark? Now, what's interesting is sometimes when you do that, I think there are buyers that end up not even having those things replaced, right? But there are surprises that
Yeah.
they have. I mean, and then it's up to them. They can get it done when they want. They're not under a crunch. They might be getting other things done too. That's the other thing, right? They might be doing some remodel or decide, oh, while I'm getting item A taken care of, I might do B, C, and D that I want to address anyway. So it's just more economical for them. But the only caveat would be if you get into escrow and the listing agent said, by the way, the seller is not going to do any repairs. So good luck, do what you want. Even there, sometimes though, when you get down to it, when faced with a decision, I've never had an escrow that's fallen apart because of a request over repairs. I'll put it that way. Even some that were sizable, because people are invested in the process. If you come from a reasonable place, if you're totally unreasonable, you might just piss off the seller so much that ruins everything. But usually people are, they understand, right? They want to get the deal done.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
I haven't had a horror story exactly. Any other pro tip, Arvin, about dealing with this?
Um, a pro tip, I think, is really just, yeah, I think I think having your client there meet with the inspector and you is a very powerful thing. I know a lot of realtors don't even want to be there for inspections. They don't want to be there. A lot of realtors don't want to be there for anything. As long as they can give access to a vendor, they're fine with just not being there, and they'll hear about it later from the report. But as an agent, you should always think about going above and beyond and try to be there for each of these major things. Plus, it's another opportunity for the buyer to go take a look around through the property again, so that sometimes you get inconvenience. They say, hey, can we go look at this property another time, or another day? But at least you're there for a purpose already, so it's another chance for them to check everything out.
Yeah, or in California, you have to do an agent visual inspection. If that's true where you are, that's your opportunity to do that or something else, or just bond with your buyer. I'd have more time with your buyer. Yeah, there's so many things where, they are time consuming. There's a trade-off at some point of what you want to spend your time on, but these are some of the, like, negotiating the deal, showing the property, the key inspections. It's pretty critical to be engaged, because these things can also blow up and be a bone of contention. I've seen agents I worked with, or I managed, where they had a deal fall apart over a refrigerator, the cost of a refrigerator, right? Like over relatively small amounts. So you never know how things can go wrong, but if you're engaged and you're there, part of the process. One of the things I would add on how you make a request, that's totally different by area too. And as a buyer's agent, because you can ask for a credit, you can have it as an addendum, you can just write a letter, various things. I would kind of bring it up to the listing agent and say, hey, by the way, here's what we're going to be requesting. How would you prefer we submit it? Like, would you prefer a letter? Would you prefer I drop an actual addendum? It's going to get to the same point, right? You're going to get there, but ask for their kind of cooperation, how they would like, what would play best for the seller. Would you like me to include some quotes for things, or you tell me, right? Let's work on this together. We're on the same
Right.
team, right, Arvin?
We're trying to get it all done. We're trying to kind of get to the finish line, at the same time. So yeah, I agree.
Totally. Yeah.
We all have a common goal.
Yeah, it's different than a lot of people compare realtors to attorneys. The big difference is with attorneys, you have a conflict. That's why you're together. With real estate, there's no intrinsic conflict. You're there because they have a shared goal. Someone wants to buy and someone wants to sell. There doesn't need to be any conflict. Sometimes people inject that into it, but you can go and not assuming there would be. Not that you give up and cave in for your client, but don't assume it has to be conflict oriented.
Right.
Awesome, great topic.
Good.
Okay, another future time we need to talk about how to deal with sellers when requests come in on your listing, but that's another day.
Oh, that's another day. All right.
Okay, Arvin, thanks.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Ciao.